A very good morning to you and a warm welcome to the best weekend news analysis program. That's Media Monitor with me, Alicia Jali. Do follow us and share your views on today's discussion on Twitter at SA Media Monitor. But first, let's have a look at all the leading news this hour. The Bucks have got their World Cup campaign back on track with a 46-6 victory against Samoa. South Africa will tonight be one of the only 6 places in the world from where moon gazers will be able to see one of the rarest astronomical events in years. There will be both a lunar eclipse and a supermoon, which means the lightest of moons will be darkened by the Earth's shadow. Now, the event is said to be so spectacular that doomsday prophets are claiming it to signal the end of the world. Addressing the UN Summit on Sustainable Development Goals, Chinese President Xi Jinping has pledged $2 billion for a new fund for developing countries. Radio News is leading with the following headlines this morning. President Jacob Zuma says South Africa's push for a more inclusive United Nations Security Council will remain a key focal point of government's foreign policy priorities. And Pope Francis has warned that religious freedom is under threat. He was speaking during the last leg of his United States tour in Philadelphia. Well, the Springboks secured a bonus point 46-6 win over Samoa in their Pool B clash at the Rugby World Cup 2015. A hat-trick by right winger J.P. Peterson, one from Skalk Burger, a first test try for substitute Skalk Brits, and a 60th international try by Brian Habana saw, of course, the Boks convincingly beat Samoa to get over last week's shocking defeat to Japan. Social media went abuzz with the Boka as win, and of course, let's see the reactions on Twitter now. All right, there's your tweets from Go Social SA. Woohoo! At Brian Habana. What a boyki! Hashtag RSA versus Samoa. Hashtag Rugby World Cup 2015. Emperor Mel says the hashtag Boka just reminded everyone why they are the best. Hashtag Go Boka. Hashtag Fever. Hashtag RSA versus Samoa. And of course, Carly van Veek, last but not least, says, well done, boys. That's how it's done. 46-6, you made us proud. Now, giving us a sense of today's headlines and analysis of the stories that hog the news headlines throughout the week, we're very pleased to welcome the Star's newspaper editor, Ms. Janet Smith, as well as Rhulani Baloyi, Sabc Radio Bulletin Editor. Ladies, a very good morning to both of you. Welcome to Media Monitor.
Thank you, Alicia.
All right, let's have a look at today's newspaper headlines before we start with the program. The Sunday Times has a story about the Springboks bouncing back after Japan's defeat with a convincing 46-6 victory against Samoa. The Sunday Independent has a story about police confiscating a gun, ammunition, as well as several items in Radovan Kwecha's prison cell. It is alleged that the Czech fugitive had plans to escape from the Kgosi prison. The City Press is leading with a story about Mbuso Mandela allegedly sending his rape accuser a video complaining about his bail conditions. Now, if found to have been sent by him, it would be a direct infringement of his bail. The Weekend Argus has a story about front page news about the Springboks, of course, beating Samoa. A sigh of relief for South Africans. The Sunday Tribune is leading with a story about Vusimuzi Moyana, the latest policeman to be killed in the line of duty. This comes after Moyana and his colleagues were attacked in an informal settlement in KwaZulu-Natal. And from news across our borders now, Nigeria's Daily Trust says 2 counts of 2 Court of Appeal judges died at the Mecca tragedy. It is also feared that other 100 Nigerians may have lost their lives in the disaster. All right, a very good morning. Now, ladies, thank you so much for joining us. Let's start, of course, with good news today. It's the Sunday Times' front page, and it just simply says, Boks bring back the joy. Now, I did watch that game yesterday, ladies, and the Rugby World Cup has obviously, you know, given us mixed feelings when of course, the Rugby World Cup started and the Springboks' poor performance in the last game. What do you think about yesterday's performance, ladies? Let's start with you, Janet.
You know, I think the relief must have been enormous, not only for our you know, kind of sense of national pride, but particularly for the coach, Heine Kamea. I mean, during the week, we had read various stories about the kind of pressure he was on behind the scenes, not only from SARU, but obviously a degree of political pressure. So I think for him, he can step back a little bit today and contemplate, you know, a way forward. Still, games lying ahead, that could be unusual tests for us. But certainly, I think this one, yeah, I think also for Captain Jean de Villiers, unfortunately, injury may loom, but we have seen how some younger players, Handré Pollard, etc., have stepped up.
Absolutely.
So good news for us.
Yeah, very good news, Rhulani.
I think, as one of the newspaper headlines said, that the Boks have again become South Africa's sweetheart. I think we're a country who don't take kindly to defeat. We expect the best. Absolutely. And only the best. And I mean, nobody expected us to lose to Japan, but now we have to see what's going to happen with the game against Scotland next week Sunday. They've got a bigger mountain to climb, but we're grateful that yesterday they restored the pride for South Africa, and we're all happy about what happened.
All right. So what do you think going forward? You know, Janet, it was always the big question about transformation. Looking at yesterday's team, I mean, it wasn't that much of a big change from the previous, you know, team that actually lost to Japan. But, I mean, some sort of transformation there, and a lot of people were very happy about the team that played yesterday.
Yes, and I think the transformation issue remains, you know, when they return, it's going to remain contentious. Yeah. And I think as a South African, I was rather pleased that you know, the team which lost against Japan was not necessarily, you know, a profoundly transformed team, because otherwise the criticism would have been around that rather than on the quality of what we've actually got.
Absolutely.
So this is a truth that is out there, rather than you know, some kind of manufactured team. This is the real team, you know, that we can put forward now. But certainly when they come back, I think this is going to dominate again.
Yeah. All right. Okay, let's go on to page 5 now of the Sunday Times. It says, new twist, genital trophy. A very shocking story. Apparently, police found 7 female genital trophies in the freezer of Peter Fredrickson. Janet, what do you think?
Well, you know, it's the kind of story that when you think about it, makes you feel quite terrified about, you know, the possibilities for, you know, meeting strangers. You know, what can lie ahead. But I think one issue here that we need to pay attention to is that this man entered our country seemingly rather easily. He shouldn't have been here. And there are a whole lot of those kinds of issues that will play into this ultimately, I think. How careful we need to be around who we allow in. But certainly the substance of it is horrific. I think it's one of the most disturbing stories we've read, just
Janet,
about gender
my
violence.
issue here is, how has this gone unnoticed for so long, Rhulani?
But the problem is that, Alicia, we don't even know who these women are. Nobody has reported them missing.
They're not, yeah,
that's what really surprises me. Who are these? Are they maybe people who are picked up from the street, people who don't have families? And you must remember that the psyche of a serial killer or people like this, people who keep trophy, who keep video material, who keep the material, they're not thinking that the police one day will confiscate those things. It's for their own joy. They enjoy the glory of what they have done. For them, it's like a trophy. I have won. This is one woman. I mean, there's dates, there's names. You know, every time maybe he opened his freezer, he looked at all of those. That's what things that goes on in a sick mind can really shock you. But for him, I think that's what made him happy. I mean, when the police went to arrest him, he was just drinking, having a glass of wine, going on as if everything is okay. And his current wife was worried, and he even did the same thing to his wife, and he said the wife has to be clean. Surely, maybe psychiatrists would be able to tell us what type of a human being does things like this. I mean, he's got a criminal record in Denmark, and here he came to settle in South Africa, and he's not the only one. We harbor a lot of fugitives.
Exactly, and he's trying to run. We're going to talk about him after the break, ladies. Well, we're going to take a quick ad break, and when we return, we're going to continue with today's newspaper headlines. Please stay with us.
Sabc brings to you Rugby World Cup 2015. Let's do this.
Well, I mean, a day like this, just coming alongside the our National Heritage Day is just fantastic, because that's what tourism is. It showcases everything that South Africa is about, and we're encouraging people to travel not only to see things, but to experience things. And that's a difference. When you're standing here, you're hearing things, you're smelling things, you're feeling it, you're not just seeing it. And that's what we're trying to do, is to promote domestic tourism. Tourism, Leanne, as you know, I mean, it's been doing very, very well for a long time, for decades, in fact. But we have had setbacks, starting off with the Ebola outbreak and then other factors that have negatively affected tourism. But we'll get out of it. We're very confident that we will get out of it.
Yeah. Sabc brings to you Rugby World Cup 2015. Let's do this.
Welcome back to Media Monitor. Our analyst this morning, Ms. Janet Smith, the executive editor at The Star, and of course our very own Sabc Radio Bulletin Editor, Ms. Rhulani Baloyi. Ladies, let's now have a look at the City Press, and it's leading with a very controversial story there. It says, Mboso Mandela lashes out at accuser. Now, in a shocking twist, we've never heard of anything like this. The ever so controversial Mboso Mandela has apparently sent a video to his rape accuser complaining about, wait for it, his uncomfortable bail conditions. Ladies,
what can she do? That's the thing. What can she do? And I think, you know, sometimes when you're in trouble, you think you are in a desperate position. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't know that by sending the alleged victim these messages, he's actually incriminating himself somehow, somewhere. And I think if I was Mbuso, I would come down and allow the justice system to take charge, because I think that's where he needs to be. Just don't say anything to anybody, no evidence of him saying
it's a
anything.
Sub judice
yeah,
matter.
He must just come down and allow the criminal processes to take place.
Janet?
I think my main concern is who surrounds this man. Who are his, you know, the people who love him, his advisors who are, you know, containing him. It just feels like those people are not there. And what's the history of this? You know, how did he emerge? That's very concerning. You know, 23, you already have 2 children, another one on the way. That in itself, a value system
and jobless
difficulties.
Yeah.
And we would all like, you know, the Mandela children and grandchildren to be well supported, but you know, is that really there?
But are we really looking at who he is versus what the case really is about? Because I think that's the way that the media is actually certainly projected it, Janet.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's true. You know, it's a bit of an unfortunate one for us because we are very drawn to this case. I think even on the day when he appeared in court, we were willing to flout, you know, the magistrate's position on pictures because he's obviously, and he's only going to gain, you know, in I suppose his shadow is only going to loom greater, you know, for us. And it's also is a difficult one for him, but he's clearly used to a particular level of attention throughout his life, and he's now not able to negotiate that and accept, you know, that his current position is one of an ordinary man.
Right. Yeah, but I think other men his age who are in similar situations, who are not known by anybody, they must be thinking, at least no one is focusing on me, no one is focusing on my case. And I think we as South Africans, we expect a lot from the children of the people that we look up to. You know, we would expect a lot from the children of our president, the children of the CEOs and all of those. We hold them in high standard and we don't allow them to be individuals. At the end of the day, Mbuso is an ordinary man. He will make mistakes. And when you divorce him from the Mandela surname, he's still a human being, and which is why he said to the magistrates he wants to be treated like any other person, an ordinary person, not like a Mandela, because he knows there's a lot of expectation and it might work to his disadvantage, the fact that he's a Mandela.
All right, so let's continue now with the City Press. Still on page 7, it says, we shall tell doctors where to go. Well, our health minister is apparently forging ahead with his plan to regulate where private healthcare providers can operate their practices. Is this a good or a bad thing, ladies?
I think it's a good idea coming from the minister, because you must know that in a lot of rural areas, it's not easy to get proper medical function. We have the primary health care facilities, and that's the beginning and the end of it. If you're very sick, you have to be taken to a provincial hospital, which is very full. There's a whole lot of things that are not going right. But doctors have been saying, we don't mind going to work in rural areas, but we need the facilities. We need electricity. We need water. We need the roads. And if you can get, and I've been hearing a lot of ministers, their spokespeople saying that you can't expect one department to sort out one issue. So you have the Department of Water Affairs has to be involved, transport, power, everybody has to come together to make sure that there are facilities. And this could attract doctors to go and want to work in rural areas.
But is this not restricting for the majority of people that are just looking for healthcare, Janet, that actually can afford it?
I think this is the story, another story of the great divide in our country, you know, where 20% can afford that, but 80% can't. I think the minister also battles a little bit with this one in the media with us, because what he was saying last week was, you know, I want to start this thing from scratch. I want to have the consultations and the discussions. Zuma promulgated, you know, the certificate of need last year. Then, you know, that was withdrawn. They were looking to try and have that in operation from April next year. And also, I think the minister has concerns around the provincial health, you know, authorities' ability to actually implement policy properly. So I think this is something he would like to take back to central government. But I think that the thing we are all waiting on now is the white paper. It's absolutely essential now that we see a white paper and see what he's actually describing here. Because when private healthcare was unhappy about the certificate of need last year, they were also operating in a realm of difficult regulatory framework that really didn't favour I suppose the viability of private-public partnerships. So there's still a lot of work to be done around that. But I think, you know, in our hearts, we have to believe this is the right minister. He's working very hard. He's in New York at the moment. He's very involved. We don't see him operating politically, you know, making statements broadly. He seems very focused on his area.
And that's been a very big issue, Janet, that, you know, politics can tend to, you know, get in the way of a lot of things, eh?
A huge distraction. And I think he's stayed fairly well clear of that.
All right, let's move on now. Rhulani, you'll have your say in the Sunday Independence front page there. It says, cops foil Quetcher's plot to escape. Well, apparently yesterday, police foiled an escape plot by Radovan Quetcher, raiding his cell and confiscating, wait for it, a pistol, ammunition, as well as a gadget that resembles a taser. It's busy at the Kgosi Mampuru prison, ladies, all because of one prisoner.
Yeah,
what's going on?
He's an international fugitive, and maybe he's thinking, I mean, if I was Quetcher, I mean, he's used to the good life. I mean, he misses his Bedford View home. He misses everything, all the money that he has. And now he's got cases in the Pretoria Magistrates Court, Alexandra Magistrates Court, Randburg Magistrates Court, Palm Ridge Magistrates Court. All over Gauteng, he's got court cases that he's going through. At least he's been convicted of one. There's still more. I actually sometimes don't remember how many cases he's going through. So I would, if I was him, I would take chances, which of course it will work, because now if they've confiscated all these things, they will open a new case of trying to escape. And it goes back to the same thing why he was rejected bail. How many times did he apply, Janet? 4, 5, 6 times? Yeah, he's a very... I think he's one of those people who must just allow the justice system in South Africa to take charge and just relax. Because now they're going to put him in maybe in a single cell where he cannot interact with anybody, and they're going to watch him 24/7.
But Janet, I mean, I asked this question when we first spoke about Radovan Quetcher, the fact that there was USBs and computers found in his cell. Is this normal prison operations? I mean, what's going on in our prisons?
You know, I think that this is our main concern. You know, is this an index of what's really going on? We've heard rumours about other prisoners before. I think it's very, very concerning because we don't have a true sense of what the security is like. And this is, you know, one of South Africa's most secure prisons, allegedly. So this is a huge concern. You know, I suppose we had a sense of that with other high-profile prisoners like Clive Derby-Lewis. You know, were they, you know, was there anything in their cell that ought not to have been there? So the rumours have circulated, probably most of the time unfounded, but there is this atmosphere that our prisons are not as secure as they should be.
But also, and when you have money like Quetcher, you can buy a prison warder, give them 100,000 to get you all those items. And, you know, cameras could stop working for 2 hours. You know, anything is possible. And I think, which is why the Correctional Services Minister was saying that there's a lot of loopholes in the Correctional Services Department and we need to do a lot of cleaning.
Absolutely. We need to do some spring cleaning. Now, let's have a look, of course, at page 5 of the Sunday Independent. It says, high-profile cases gathering dust in the police cells. A very shocking tale of how cases are just abandoned at police stations. I mean, the Senzo Meyiwa case is the one that we all know. What is this? Police negligence or incompetence, ladies? Janet?
You know, I think what put the story into a bit of perspective was the comment from the Institute for Security Studies, Gareth Newham, who was saying that even in the United States, 1 in 3 murder cases remain unsolved. So I think worldwide, it's hugely problematic. And this is why people, you know, think that they'll get away with it. But Senzo Meyiwa, I mean, he was given a provincial funeral. This was a very, very high-profile case. How come, you know, it's unable to solve this one?
And there were 4 people in the house that day when the incident happened.
Not under-resourced people, presumably not people who could really be put under pressure. So I think that's a particularly scary one. If that case, you know, has not kind of reached at least some kind of median point, you know, how easy is it going to be to solve others? Hazel Crane, we have a sense, well, you know, perhaps there was kind of mafia involvement in her murder, so on. Very, very dark, discomforting stuff. But surely there were some obvious suspects there.
Radovan Quetcher is one of them.
I agree with Janet that I think, for me, I would have thought by now they would have been able to crack it using a forensic investigation. Ballistics, what firearm was used? Who can they trace it to? Even if it was an illegal firearm, surely they should have been able to trace where it came from. And I personally believe, remember there was a statement that the police released and said that Senzo Meyiwa's father must stop talking to the media because he's actually going in the way of their investigation. They wanted to arrest the suspect, and he alerted the suspect, and the suspect has gone aground. If the person is still in South Africa, how difficult can it be to arrest that person? I mean, it's now 11 months since Senzo Meyiwa was killed, and we're not closer to finding out who it was, what happened. And it's just one of those stories that doesn't make sense.
All right, we're going to leave it there with the newspaper headlines now. We're going to recap the prominent stories of the week after this short break. Do stay with us.
My people, we are getting there, and thanks to you, Pati is set to become our country's 12th official language. Here's today's word. Substitute. Replacing a drinking buddy with somebody more fun. Yes! That's more like it.
Make it a home game with a case of Castle Lager for only $149.99 and help make Pati South Africa's 12th official language. Tops at Spar. Shake things up.
As Africans, we tell a common story. Together, we make up a common picture. For the 7th time since 1998, AfriCities Summit is uniting people from local governments across the continent and asking them to contribute in voice and action to shape a common vision of transformed African cities by 2063. Join us. Learn about the AfriCities 7 Summit, Johannesburg, South Africa, 29 November to 3 December 2015.
We are back on Africa's News Leader. That's SABC News, and you can air your views on our topics today. Find us on Twitter at SA Media Monitor. Time now for the stories of the week. Now, as the VW global emissions scandal continues to unfold, here at home, the company will face investigation by the national regulator for compulsory specifications in order to assess if there are any transgressions on its part. Ladies, this is a very big scandal concerning a very big manufacturer. I'm sure all those people that have VWs are actually asking themselves, is my car going to be recalled? What's going to happen? Janet?
Yes, I think that's definitely a major issue for people because cars cost a lot of money,
Yes,
and it's very difficult to make a decision around a car. But I also think for VW, it really is a bit of a disaster. They're already battling in emerging markets, Brazil particularly. They haven't really been able to stake the kind of claim that they wanted to in the United States. And of course, this has all begun in the United States. And the knock-on effect is also huge. I mean, Platinum has battled as a result of this because of the catalytic converters. So there are various aspects to this that I suppose will unfold over the next few weeks. But I think basically as a consumer, yes, you will have huge concerns. And I think VW has said they're putting aside 7.6 billion or something like that to deal with this. But on an individual basis, how do you make that claim? It's completely.
And how do people keep trusting you after such a big scandal? I think that's going to be the main question, Rhulani.
It's going to be very difficult, but if you love a car, you know, people, some of us, we're very compulsive buyers. If you love a product or a brand, you become so loving, and nothing can stop you from really. I think in the short term, yes, it will have an impact. I mean, we've seen the CEO resigning. He says he knew nothing, for me, which doesn't make sense.
Brand loyal.
Yes, how do you say, as a CEO, Martin van der Koon, he says he didn't know anything, but he resigned. I mean, this thing, there must have been a budget for it.
Yes.
And someone should have signed off on the budget, and the CEO should have known something was happening. And it just doesn't make sense. But it's a good thing that maybe he resigned, but I think answers still need to come back. And it's going to have a very international repercussions for VW. And now that South Africa is also checking, we've got a plant in the Eastern Cape.
Yes.
We will see what they found out from there.
But ladies, do you think this is a real sense, we're starting to get the real sense of how the competition is out there in terms of the motor industry, Janet?
Yes, and I think, you know, as the climate change and you know, environmental issues, I mean, we really felt it escalating this week, you know, around the Pope's statements in the United States. Also, you know, yes, on Friday, the South African government, along with many others, was working on the UN Convention on Climate Change. So it's very much on our minds. So for car manufacturers, this is a huge issue. And to be cheating a little bit, or what appears like cheating, I mean, how ubiquitous is it? BMW has been, you know, kind of cited in some reports as also having to look perhaps at some of its issues. Who knows what's gone on there? But I think Rhulani's right. Brand loyalty is very important here for VW. But how do they rebuild that? Because people care about the environmental issues, so you're already on the kind of moral back foot.
I think they'll give them new cars, so
but
the people
for
will
me, Alicia, the moral of the story is that corruption is not limited to South Africa.
Yes.
The big multinational corporations are involved in most of these things, and it's one of those things that we try to underplay and focus on the maybe local public enterprises, things like those, but it's an international phenomenon.
Yeah.
And when it comes out, everybody's shocked.
They think, well, corruption only exists in South Africa, but let's leave it there on that story. Now, last week we discussed the spat between the Department of Education as well as the teachers' unions over the ANA exams. Now, as the story continues to develop, we decided to get in depth with it, focusing on the right of learners to education as the two parties failed to reach a compromise. But first, let's have a quick look at this clip.
Express confidence that the schools were ready to administer ANA and that the postponement to next year would negatively affect them. They also expressed disappointment and raised concerns over the conduct of teacher unions in the attempt to undermine the program of ANA this year.
All right, and now to get the union stand on this issue on the line, we have SATU General Secretary, Mr. Mogoena Maluleke. Mr. Maluleke, a very good morning to you, sir, and thank you so much for your time. Look, many people want to know why unions are involved in the ANA sagas. Why, sir?
Good morning. Let me thank you for having us in there. We must indicate that all unions have been making submission to the Department of Education since 2013 around the format of the annual national assessment. And I must also indicate that we do not have a problem with national assessment. What we have said is that we need to remodel it so that it gives us the necessary information that would enable the system to make intervention where it's necessary. So that's the reason that we said that because we have been talking and the minister has proceeded with this non-consultation posture and the department has been moving on as if we do not exist, it created a problem. And we have got specific issues that we think must be remodeled in this particular annual national assessment. So that is what we wanted to suggest.
Mr. Maluleke, look, a very important question was raised here on the show last week, and I have to have you address this. How is government engaging with your members? Is it under formidable or amicable ways? We've heard there might be some sort of mistreatment towards the teachers regarding this issue. Please explain to us, Mr. Maluleke.
Under the existing legislation in our country, both in terms of the Constitution but also in terms of the National Education Policy Act, in terms of Section 6 for that matter, it makes it very clear that before any publication or of any gazette in terms of policy that has been determined by the minister, the Education Labour Relations Council, parties being the unions which are registered in terms of the Labour Relations Act, must be consulted. So it is not an issue where the minister would publish and then call us to make public comments, because we are not part of the structures that are regarded as being parties that can be consulted. We are part of the process of developing that particular policy. So the consultation between ourselves and the Department of Education has died since 2009. So since that particular time, we've been fighting amongst ourselves about consultation, because the ministry currently, what they do is that if there is something that can help them to hide the fact that they don't want to consult, they'll say, no, that matter is under Minister Sisulu in the Public Service and Administration at the time of Minister Sisulu. And then now, it's under Minister Chabani, because this thing does not fall into our area. And so now we must always declare dispute. Then the dispute is determined, this thing belongs to education. Then once that thing gets to education, there's no consultation.
Absolutely. Mr. Maluleke, before I let you go, Minister Andrew Motshekga says that the ANAs are going ahead in December, but do you agree with education experts that the ANAs is quite a vital, important tool in the education system?
We believe that the national assessment is important. It's a vital tool in the education, but we do not believe in the annual assessment, because it does not give us to make sure that we are able to implement intervention programs.
Thank you so much, Mr. Maluleke. That's Mr. Maluleke. He is, of course, the SADTU General Secretary, and, of course, he was clarifying their position on the NS exams. Ladies, I just want to hear your quick views. The big question here is, why are the unions getting involved in this? But we've just heard, and I think it's a very valid point. Janet, don't you think?
I do think it's a valid point, and it's important to also look at the composition of that. Because although we hear SADTU, we hear NAPTOSA, and those are unions maybe, we have a particular political viewpoint on. The other unions involved with them included Afrikaans unions, etc., etc. So, it's quite broad. You also had equal education. You had people who operate on a very fundamental basis just to improve the life for disadvantaged South Africans. People like equal education. So I think looking at the composition of that is very revealing. Yes, this is not a grade promotion test, but it is a way in which we can try and realign what's gone wrong in our education in very key areas. So, yes, politically speaking, I think it's a complicated one, and I think the minister herself, is probably finding that she's coming and going on it. There's so many lobbyists.
Rhulani, what do you think is going to happen?
I imagine the dates have already been set from the December the 1st, and the teachers won't be there because they will be marking the matric exams. You must remember, most of the teachers go to mark the matric exams, and some of them will be giving out reports to the learners. The last week of school, they were saying on the radio, the teachers won't be there, and the learners. In many schools, once you finished writing your exams, you only come back to fetch your report on the last day of school.
Yes.
So it means that the teachers, even if the learners can be there, the teachers might not be available, or vice versa. But the sad thing about the story is that the learners are the casualty. They are the losers in this whole process. And I wish the task team that the Department of Basic Education has established could be able to come up with a proper way of dealing with the annual national assessments going forward. Because the unions are saying, we don't have a problem with them, but we just find a good and a better way of writing these exams. And I don't imagine myself having written exam in grade 9 and now I have to sit for another test. I don't know how that would work.
Well, somebody said that, ANAs are quite a way to actually root out the kind of, the corruption that is currently within the education system. But we're going to continue. Well, that's the question that we all want answers to, Rhulani. We're going to continue to recap prominent stories of the week shortly after this break.
SABC brings to you Rugby World Cup 2015.
Let's do this.
Heritage Day, it is a matter that we cannot do it once. It's a matter that you must continue, because on its own, it's an education. You educate the society to make sure that we must bring all together. Remember, South Africa is a diverse society, and therefore it is important that we must learn all these different cultures, because we all belong into South Africa. All of us must live together. Remember, the Freedom Charter says this land, this country belongs to all who live in it, black and white. And diverse in culture, we must also come together to make sure that we prosper together as a country.
We are here to celebrate Heritage Day today, just because as Africans we must know where we come from. We must never forget our roots, just because a tree without roots is going to die. So that's why we are here today, to celebrate our heritage as Africans.
We're here to celebrate different cultures. As Mandela fought for freedom, we call ourselves a rainbow nation. So we're here to celebrate different cultures, people from different backgrounds, different colors, and we're wearing different clothing as you see us all here. And it's wonderful to see everyone around here wearing different cultures.
SABC brings to you Rugby World Cup 2015.
Let's do this.
You're still watching Media Monitor, the most loved news analysis show this morning. I'm with Miss Janet Smith, the Star's executive editor, as well as our very own Rhulani Baloyi. She's our radio bulletin editor. Now, General Ria Pierga has less than 24 hours to convince President Jacob Zuma that she is fit to hold her position. Now, this week, President Jacob Zuma finally acted on the Farlam's recommendations, as well as public outcry, to look at her fitness as Police National Commissioner. Ladies, what do you think about this story? Eventually, some reaction. What are we going to see happen this week, Rhulani?
I think we're having history repeat itself. This is President Jacob Zuma's second term, second National Police Commissioner, second Board of Inquiry. And for me, it just sounds like the same script written with a different player.
Different cast.
Yeah, with the same president, but you know, you've just changed the National Police Commissioner and you're going to subject her to what you did with Mr. Bekicele. It's a very sad state of affairs, you know, when you look at how people in the public service try to work hard. And Ms. Ria Pierga, I personally feel that, you know, the Marikana situation, she'd only been in the jobs for 2 months, and this thing happened. She was just at the wrong place at the wrong time. And I'm just thinking, if she had been appointed just after the Marikana inquiry, how things would have turned out. So now the president wanted to say why she should not be suspended while she goes through the Board of Inquiry. But when you're looking at everything that's coming, it looks like at the end of the day, she is going to be suspended. I think it's just all procedural to say, tell me why I shouldn't suspend you. But maybe by the end of 2 weeks, she's going to be told to go on special leave.
Janet?
Well, you know, I mean, I hear what Rhulani's saying, and I think in the beginning, you know, many of us did feel that way. Such a very emotionally loaded situation for her so shortly into the job. However, since then, you know, I mean, I think the fact that an enormous truth, which was that there were two scenes, and you know, she was perhaps party to, you know, to how that was constructed in the public imagination. Also, since then, we've had the Arno Lamour scandal, which involved her. So we've been a little bit uncertain around her, I think, in you know, for many different reasons. And I think it's perfectly understandable that it would be far better to see her suspended rather than for her to continue operating, you know, for her to continue in her job while this investigation is underway, while the Board of Inquiry is underway, and also for the Board of Inquiry, you know. How do you concentrate when there's all this background noise, perhaps of other scandals, perhaps, you know, maybe there would be some kind of a police shooting over the next 2 weeks. Who knows what could happen? So the distractions around how she would lead need to be removed for this period.
But do we really need to blame Ria solely for the incident at Marikana?
I think as the National Police Commissioner, remember she went to Marikana 2 days before. She was there, she actually did speak to the police officers and the then Northwest Provincial Commissioner. They did have a lot of discussions. Remember, she had to sign off redeployments because there were police officers from other provinces and they couldn't just go there on their own. So there's things that she knew. And remember, the commission found that she had misled the commission on certain things, and she had misled her representation at the commission. So to a certain extent, the fact that she was party to not telling the whole truth in certain things, then she is somehow, it cast doubt on her ability to lead the police service. So I really feel that maybe let's see what the Board of Inquiry will come up with that we don't already know. But I'm curious to see who's going to act in her position, because I see someone being appointed to act very soon. And will the president finally bow down to appointing a national commissioner who is a seasoned police officer?
All right, we're going to leave it there now. An update and analysis of big continental as well as global news, starting with the UN. UN member states have adopted a new roadmap to achieve global sustainable growth. They committed themselves to achieve 17 developmental goals in 15 years, rather. Now, before we talk about these new goals, ladies, in your opinion, were the MDGs, were they a success that were adopted in 2000?
You know, I think it was a program of mixed fortunes, and I think here in South Africa we did have a sense that perhaps some corners were cut in order for us to be able to appear to have achieved the MDGs. I mean, we are under extreme socio-economic pressure, and it seemed a little bit too easy, and I think that's part of the early concern around the Sustainable Development Goals is, you know, what is going to be the criteria? For example, in developing nations such as ours, but not so much ours as further north. I think the example cited was Gabon, for example. A country like that needs significant support in order to be able to meet these goals within a short period. 15 years is a very short period.
It is.
For us, we're somewhat lucky because we have the National Development Plan in the background, and it has the same deadline of 2030. So we are driving at the same goals nationally and globally. So perhaps our incentive is greater. But then you look at other nations. I think Vietnam, for example, has worked very, very hard. It's been one of the great success stories. I think it's achieved a 60% improvement in its poverty levels. So, you know, out there in the world, I think the nations that would traditionally be struggling are very, very determined, and that's going to help Ban Ki-moon and his team to, you know, to get this out there positively.
All right, Rhulani, you can have a say on this one. Pressure grows for Hajj safety reform as the Saudi king orders urgent investigation into the tragic Mecca stampede amid sharp criticism from Iran. Rhulani, that was a tragic event. I don't think I've ever heard of anything like that.
Yeah, 769 people dying. You know, remember when the Lagos story happened last year, and we spoke about this, and I said, religious pilgrimages are supposed to be a place where people connect spiritually with their supernatural power. And it's very sad that things happen at these religious pilgrimages. But having 2 million people in one city for the same purpose, for me, it just sounds a bit impossible to manage. Because now the Saudi health minister was blaming the pilgrims, the worshippers. He was saying that the people didn't obey orders. They had to wait for the other group to disperse the people who were busy pelting the devil with stones. They had to first disperse, and then the other group had to come in. So everybody is trying to find out what could have gone wrong, because they say they've got 100,000 officials deployed to help with the crowds.
Let's leave it there, Rhulani. All right, ladies, do you know that we've come to the end of the show? I know it's been a great conversation. Look at Janet, she can't believe that the time is up, but it's always great hearing from you. Let's now take a look at some of the tweets that you've sent us in regards to our topics today. And there are your tweets. The special case says there are a lot of vehicles brought in from Germany by VW. The department should start there. All right, Tabang Maketla says a wake-up call not only to VW, but to the whole motor industry. Regulations must be strengthened in order to avoid such incidents. Mudao Masimbane says it is their rights. They might be afraid that the assessment will expose loopholes about their poor teaching. And we spoke about this in studio, Rhulani. Purpose says, of course, I think they are made to be too hard, especially for under-resourced rural schools. Last but not least, Euphemicist says, no, it's like expecting a 100% pass rate in matric when you don't deal with the glaring issues that leads to the initial results. All right, let's take Sean Newhoff last but not least. Let's see Sean there. What is Sean saying? All right, he says, only if the results inform future actions on the part of the education community. 3% implies the entire system is poked. Ladies, how true are these views? And I just want to hear what you think will be the leading news this week. Let's start with you, Rhulani.
The anti-corruption march on Wednesday, and of course, Ms. Ria Pierre's response to the imminent suspension.
Janet?
Crime stats. I think it's always going to be a big one for us. And also, I think we have to keep an eye on what's going on at the United Nations. China making big concessions there, big money.
All right, ladies, thank you so much for joining us. Well, that's it from us this week. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next week for another newspaper and big stories of the week analysis. We are playing out with visuals that show our rainbow nation. Email us on mediamonitor@sabc.co.za or find us on Twitter @SAMediaMonitor. I'll be back with A News at 10.
I